Think Realty Nation's Abhi Golhar. Welcome to the Think Realty Podcast. Excited to be here with you today. We have a great lineup for you. First, we're interviewing Tim Hawkins and Jeff Jinks with JeffJinksLaw.com in what I think is by far the coolest thing that investors have the ability to do: change laws for the better. So we'll talk about that and what actually happened in the state of Indiana and give you a little background on Tim and Jeff as well. So that's what's coming up in a second. And then, of course, we'll finish off the show with the 5 ways that you can make more money from your rental properties. But I'll probably talk about just 1 or 2 things that are my favorite. This podcast is brought to you by Roofstock. If you're ready to buy your next investment property, then check out Roofstock, the #1 marketplace for buying and selling single-family rental homes. Featuring tenant-occupied rental properties for sale in over 20 states, Roofstock makes it easy to invest in cash-flowing real estate outside your local market. And to help you invest remotely with confidence, all properties are backed by Roofstock's industry-leading 30-day money-back guarantee. Sign up for free today to find your next cash-flowing rental property at roofstock.com/thinkrealty. All right, Think Realty Nation. So joining me now are both Jeff Jinks with JeffJinksLaw.com and Tim Hawkins with JeffJinksLaw.com. We're going to have an awesome conversation. I'm excited to kind of hear a little bit about the history of the Indiana State Real Estate Investors Association, some of the legislation that's been going on there, and of course, this utility bill conversation that's going to be really interesting, and how investors can really stand together and create positive change for the overall community. So Jeff, Tim, welcome to the show, guys.
Yeah, thanks you very much. We really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, and love being able to talk to investors all across the country, because there's really a unified voice needed, and it's really helpful to have your message out there. So thank you for having us on.
You got it. So give me a little background on what you all do and who you are. Just a brief background, and then we'll jump into some good nitty-gritty stuff.
Yeah, no, thank you. Well, we're a law firm here in Indiana, and our law office is located in Carmel, which is a suburb of Indianapolis, and we represent real estate investors. That's our primary market focus, and we do all kinds of things for them depending on what they need. We just like to serve them in whatever way is necessary, and we've been very fortunate to grow the practice in lots of different ways, including some government relations and lobbying, which is a big part of what Tim is doing.
Awesome. And Tim, a little background?
Yeah, thanks. Graduated from law school a couple years ago. Got brought on for the firm, like Jeff said, primarily for a lot of government relations work to sort of start that wing and get that bolstered and get clients for that purpose. Have background working for United States congressmen and for a state Medicaid agency.
Awesome. That sounds good. Now, for a lot of new real estate investors out there, a Real Estate Investors Association is a really good place to start. Whether it's meeting the right people, getting the right information, understanding the local market, its dynamics, what's happening, what's not happening, what's about to happen, etc. And so, Jeff, talk to me a little bit about the history of the Indiana State Real Estate Investors Association. Like, I was there just a couple weeks ago visiting for something a little different, but I did have an opportunity to drive around, and Elizabeth Mayora was awesome enough to host me at one of her Airbnbs, and there's a crazy amount of opportunity in Indianapolis. But give me a little history about the Investors Association. Tell me what's going on there.
Right. Well, thank you. It's really important what's going on. As you know, there are real estate investor groups all over the country and all over the state, often referred to as RIAs. And the Indiana State Group was formed after a couple years of frustration by local RIAs saying, we want to follow what's going on in the local towns, in the cities, and in the state level on the legislation to see what's happening that's affecting landlords. And really, it went through this long kind of process of almost 2 years to figure out, how do we deal with the problems that investors face on a legal level, on the legislative level. And that's when Indiana State RIA was formed. It's a not-for-profit 501c6 which is what is allowed to be a lobbyist specifically on political issues. And it was created just for the purpose of monitoring and then lobbying for changes in the law that affect landlords in a positive way. And it's really been a great process. There's a fantastic board of directors that are doing a fantastic job, and they just really started pushing it. And then we got into this legislative matter about a year ago.
So give me a little background on the legislative matter that was just ruled on. I think it was today or yesterday, just very recently. What was the history behind this, and how did investors and attorneys, real estate attorneys from across the state say, hey, you know what, enough is enough. Here's the deal. Here are all the facts. Give me some background.
Yeah, really important. Kind of the theme here is that united we stand as investors, divided we fall. And what happened was a year ago, right at this time of year, one of our local investors was referred by the Indiana state over to our law firm because in Indiana, the law is that utilities are not regulated anymore. So every town, every city has its own utility board that decides what are the rates, what are the procedures. And about a couple years ago, and specifically 1 year ago in the town of Bargersville, Bargersville wrote an ordinance. Bargersville wrote an ordinance saying landlords are liable for the utility bills of tenants. That's everything: water, sewer, electric, gas, everything.
Jeez.
And the crazy part, yeah, I know. They're like, well, who's the easy target to collect?
I mean,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, it's not the tenant. It's going to be me, the guy that owns all the property in Indianapolis. Like, come on.
Right. Exactly. No, totally unfair and totally just unfair. And on a lot of different levels, right? Because, you know, as an investor, you might live in one community but have property in another. And this was a big problem with the legislation and the ordinance in Bargersville, was that Bargersville is a very small town, but the utilities they provide go to a lot bigger area. And many investors live outside of the town of Bargersville. So number one, they're not allowed to vote for who's on the town council. So there's a failure of democracy. And then number two, as crazy as this is, the town council members were all employees in one way or another of the local utility. So they were writing the ordinance for the city.
What?
I know. Stop. Yeah, they're all on the utility payroll. So they're writing these ordinances, and they slipped this one in kind of in a weird process. I know. Right. It makes you smack.
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, I wish I could break this iPad on my head, but I can't. That would do some serious.
Well, that's what our client, I'm going to use her name because she's been instrumental in the whole thing. Her name's Marcia Isbell, and we often call this bill in the law firm Marcia's bill, because Marcia said enough is enough. I'm not going to be liable. She's been in the real estate business forever, had a number of properties. She's also an appraiser, does a professional job. And she's like, wait a minute, I'm not getting stuck with these bills. So she hired us, and we went back to the town council, and we tried to have some give and take with them, but they only give you a few minutes on the agenda. So when we were there, Marcia and all the investor groups around the state, their state RIA coordinated this, and other groups, we packed the house at that town council meeting. They had to bring in more chairs. It was standing room only for Marcia, and we'd get up there and present, and they just wouldn't cooperate with making the bill payable by the tenant instead of the landlord. So they persisted with that. So it got the attention of a lot of people, and there was a lot of support in the community. And Marcia really was an effective spokesman for her cause, and we were able to, work with her. And then that's when we got involved on the state level. And one of the legislators, his name is Woody Burton, I'll let Tim talk about him a little bit more, but he heard about this because it's near his jurisdiction, and he's a landlord and a realtor and whatnot, and he wasn't happy with it. So when Bargersville did this, we found about 13 or 14 other communities that were doing the same thing, at least 13 or 14.
Wow.
And we got to do something about it. And so that's kind of how the background of what was the genesis of this new bill. We call it House Bill 1347 and Marcia's bill here affectionately.
We talk about this idea of freedom, and we talk about this idea of creating opportunities just with concepts, just with ideas. And sometimes these ideas and concepts come to us out of frustration. And Tim, if you don't mind maybe giving a little bit of background on Representative Woody Burton and why he kind of got involved, I think, what Jeff said was kind of interesting, right? He thought he was directly affected by this. And so he said, this is, what's going on? I mean, don't get me wrong, I would also be super angry with this entire thing. But give me your take and your understanding of what Representative Burton had to say about this specific issue.
Yeah, Rep. Burton's been a fantastic ally for us, has allowed us to help write House Bill 1347, along with some other groups, associations, and their lobbyists throughout the state. And I do want to make a quick note about Bargersville, by the way. Turns out that all of those town council members were voted out in the last election. So
wow,
some of the voices being heard that way. So we're happy to hear that, at least.
Yeah. Were they also renters? Do you know how many of them were homeowners? Just out of curiosity, it would be really interesting to see if they were all renters, right? Like that would have been like a triple whammy. Like, come on.
The most. How many conflicts of interest can you have at once, right? Right. So Representative Burton, like Jeff said, is a realtor, a property owner. He owns 10 or 12 properties in Johnson County, where much of which he represents, and had this exact thing happen to him with a different town's utility where he owns properties, and frankly was just as fed up as Marcia and then the folks in Bargersville, and didn't know where to turn himself. So we, along with our help here with state RIA, we had the apartment association, the realtors association, bankers, a good half dozen number of lobbyists and state groups that were able to rally around this cause with us, and certainly were instrumental with Representative Burton. We had a number, I can't even tell you how many different meetings, texts, calls. He was really relying on us, and we were relying on him heavily, both in and out of session. Indiana being a part-time legislature, it's quite a sprint when you only have 4 months to get bills all the way through the lengthy process they have.
So how long had this utility issue been in place? Was it like a year? Was it 2 years? I think Jeff mentioned this. It was late last year or something. Do you remember when it was first signed into?
Yeah, the Bargersville ordinance was only a year old because Marcia contacted us right after it was enforced, because all the landlords were starting to be told, you've got to redo this. There's a new procedure. And we got involved right away with her. And that's how we found other communities that were doing the exact same thing, trying to impose payment on the landlord instead of the person who was using it, which would be the tenant, of course.
Were there other communities and other cities and other counties where this had been going on for years instead of just the 1 year? I mean, it just seems like it was just a perfect storm. Y'all caught it right then and there,
No, it's been going on for about 5 years. Is when they regulated the utilities, but it took the local communities a little bit of time to figure out, well, how do we collect on delinquent accounts? What do we do? And then have a legislative process of their own of writing new ordinances and whatnot. So that, we're catching Bargersville at the tail end of that initial wave of new ordinances by the towns and cities, but it's all over the state. The bigger cities, the smaller ones, it's everywhere. It's really a problem.
So that's why my big takeaway here is if I'm an investor and I see something that's going on that maybe just doesn't make a little bit of sense or sometimes a lot of sense, then get involved, right? Like work with the necessary people, find out who the necessary people are, right? In your case, it was Representative Burton, and make that case and see how quickly and to what extent it can be escalated. We have to wrap up, but just real quick, a couple of shout outs and just a couple of calls to action here. Gentlemen, if I wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do it? Because you seem very active in the investing community in Indiana, and then, of course, the Indiana State Real Estate Investors Association, and that's In-State RIA. I think that's pretty cool. In-State RIA, good use of the word in. But what's the best way to get in touch with you, and how can I do so?
Yeah, our firm is simple, jeffjinkslaw.com, and our best email address for that is attorney@jeffjinkslaw.com. You can call our office at 317-810-1400, or have the RIA website.
Yeah, I think just contact the law firm that way.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Awesome, and leave us with a gold nugget, because this is very inspirational, right? We take an issue that investors are having, a real issue, and now you've changed that within a year and a half at the most. What's my takeaway?
Yeah, the takeaway is, and I'm going to adjust the camera.
Yeah, no worries. Go for it.
I mean, yeah, the takeaway, of course, is united we stand. This law that was passed was very dramatic to get it done, and the investment community really came together in a united way, in a focused way, right? Everybody complains about things. We see things in the news and we're frustrated with what's going on. But when you come together as a unified force and then focus directly in on a single problem, you can get so much done. That's the takeaway. But you have to be united. You have to be focused. And when you do that, you can accomplish great things, just like all those people getting voted out in Bargersville, including one person who lost by one vote. And that vote was cast, you got it, by Marsha Isbell. She was one of the people that voted for the
ultimate revenge.
Right. It's gone. Right. So it's really neat to see that happen. And you really, democracy can work, but it's not easy. You got to fight hard. You got to show up.
Yeah.
And all the community did. And they came down to the State House. Everybody came to the committee meetings. They came to speak with Representative Burton. They came for the votes. I mean, it makes a difference when you personally show up at the State House as a group. It really does make a difference. And we're just honored to be part of that process and look forward to doing it more in the future.
Tim, Jeff, certainly appreciate the time, gentlemen. I certainly appreciate it. It's been awesome connecting with you. And Think Realty Nation, we want to get in touch with Jeff, Jinks, and also Tim Hawkins. Go to jeffjinkslaw.com. Coming up, 5 ways to make more money from your rental property. Be right back. This segment is brought to you by Narada Real Estate Investments, your premier source for cash flow investment property. Visit www.turnkeyrealestateinvestments.com. In a recent article on thinkrealty.com, it was noted there are 5 ways to make more money off of your rental property. The first, rent out additional storage. Number 2, get a home warranty to cut out your expenses. Number 3, be selective when raising the rent. Number 4, add Airbnb to the mix. And number 5, add extra fees when applicable. So in my experience, I like all of these, don't get me wrong, but I do want to talk about Airbnb for just a second. I've become a huge fan of Airbnb and short-term rentals. If you do it right and you give your property a personality, give it an edge, give it something cool. One of my really good friends, Elizabeth Mayora, out of Indianapolis, has a property that she calls Viva Las Vegas. It's amazing. And you walk in and it's all Las Vegas themed. Give that a shot. Even if you have to invest an extra $2 or $3 or $4 or $5 or maybe even $10,000 to make the property look tip-top, I'm pretty sure you'll get a very sizable ROI just because people want to feel welcomed and people want to feel like it's an experience. It's not just another house. So Airbnb, love it. Adding extra fees. I like extra fees. Hey, it doesn't hurt, right? If you have a lease termination, that's a fee. Holding fees, extra occupant fees, pet fees, of course. So see what's normal in your area and then identify the fees that make sense for you. Identify how much these fees would be, even like a tech fee, some type of home automation piece. During the the Think Realty radio days, I talked to Sean Miller from Point Central, and I still can't remember. I don't know how I remembered all that. I still feel like I remember all those radio shows. But we talked to him about some of the home automation pieces and how much of a bump you can get in monthly rent. And that can come at a $25, $30, $40, $50 a month bump in just that convenience sometimes. So take a look at these things. Again, number 4 and 5 are my favorites, but number 3, you want to be selective when raising the rent, kind of makes sense. Number 2, get a home warranty to cut your expenses. And then, of course, number 1, rent out additional storage. Think Realty Nation, that's the show. Have any questions, get in touch. Go to thinkrealty.com/podcast if you want to, if you'd like to, I'd invite you to go check out the rest of the podcast that we've done so far. And if you've got questions for me specifically and directly, get in touch anywhere online at Abhi Golhar. Until next time, happy investing. This podcast is brought to you by Roofstock. If you're ready to buy your next investment property, then check out Roofstock, the #1 marketplace for buying and selling single-family rental homes. Featuring tenant-occupied rental properties for sale in over 20 states, Roofstock makes it easy to invest in cash-flowing real estate outside your local market. And to help you invest remotely with confidence, all properties are backed by Roofstock's industry-leading 30-day money-back guarantee. Sign up for free today to find your next cash-flowing rental property at roofstock.com/thinkrealty.